Hey, Mindy, you got a second?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to Justin and Louise, and they were mentioning for the 30-year celebration coming up that you guys were thinking about doing a video.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Being able to show something about our accomplishments over those 30 years, I
I
think.
think it'd be great.
You know, I can tell the story.
Oh, gosh. I'll see you at the meeting later. Bye.
Guess we're gonna make the video. VR Systems has been in operations. We're celebrating our 30th year. So we're not new to the game, we just might be new to you.
30 years of serving elections, we've done nothing else. It's quite an accomplishment. I'm really very proud of what we've accomplished.
The stability of VR has always been there. We've ridden the wave. We've gone through the highs and the lows, and we didn't miss a beat.
Companies lasting for 30 years is not something you hear about all the time. And then a company in elections with all the scrutiny and all the pressures that are put on that company at any given moment.
Yeah, Florida has come a long way, since I started in elections back in 2004. And where it is now, it's leaps and bounds above what it was. And that's a lot of it's because of VR.
The tight integration and understanding of the whole ecosystem, that things can happen inside VoterFocus, the registration system, that impact the electronic poll book and vice versa, operating seamlessly from one vendor who's guaranteeing the whole process works like you'd expect it to, I think has been one of the greatest strengths of the EVID platform and by proxy the VoterFocus platform.
When I started here 19 years ago, there was 6 of us. We are now just shy of 50. And things culturally really haven't changed much. We're very family-like oriented, meaning we're willing to help each other. Our doors are always open. We have breakfast together on Fridays, so we're food-driven. But
somebody needs help with something or something comes up, we make ourselves available to support that other person in whatever endeavor or task they are completing. And I think that's what makes it a great company to work for.
Whenever I hear them on the phone, maybe they're unsure of an issue that they have with the customer, I can run to them like, hey, you need help? And they're like, yes. And so we'll get on the phone with the customers just to interact, to understand the true need. It just helps them feel more confident in their job as well, because it's like, I have someone here that's always gonna have my back to make sure that I'm leading the customer down the right path.
You do call the EVID team for EVID things and you call the VoterFocus team for VoterFocus teams, but behind the hood, behind the scenes, we talk to each other, right? And we make sure we understand how the systems interact and how best to support the customer. And at this point, we're pretty seasoned at it. It's getting pretty smooth from my perspective,
30 years that's a great accomplishment for a business, and especially for us to have made it through the hard elections and then the COVID. To me, it just shows that we're, a great company. We've got it together. Another 30 years would not surprise me.
If you look at the things that have changed in 30 years alone, how fast you have to adapt to an ever-changing landscape, it says a lot that you're still in it. Never really imagined I would wind up in voting, but I had no idea what all was involved. Seeing how the process works, meeting a lot of interesting people around the country and to help them. People like to say, I'll go to work to get paid. Yeah, I want to pay my bills, but it's good to still be appreciated. If it's just getting paid, that's not really enough.
It's fun going to recruiting events and different things like that, and students, people looking for internships, you know, it's like, well, what do you do? It's like, well, we help run elections. And like, oh, well, that's cool and interesting. I said, no, you don't understand. I said, Florida elections is key to the United States elections, which is key to the world. And so if we, who is in every Florida county, does something, that affects the world. And that's huge. That's a big responsibility. And most of the time they're like, whoa, that's heavy. I was like, it is. That's a lot of responsibility, but something we do, and we're proud of that we do a really good job of it.
The elections community is a small community. We know the other vendors. We know who our competitors are, right? But if someone fails, whether it's a vendor or a county struggles, it reflects poorly on all of us. And so we take the stance, yes, we are a vendor. We're selling a product, we're selling a service, but we can't leave it there. We have to stay engaged and connected to ensure that our customers are successful. We take that very, very seriously. It's not one that we, they sign the contract and we train them and go away.
The industry is better when everyone works together to improve elections as a whole. Everything from how we design our products to how we support our customers to the security that we provide throughout the system. So that's the role that we play. It's our job to help make elections better, and we want to do that with our customers.
Almost 9 years now I've been with VR. The one thing I learned once I first started with VR is the elections are 365 days of the year.
As far as founding VR, long term, did you see VR being where it is today?
We would just focus on the very near future.
VR Systems was founded in 1992. Jane being the founder of the company and David in a supporting role there. So I joined right after the 2000 election. I was officially the first hire. I was no family member. I wasn't related in any way. David especially had worked on software in the UK. Around elections, it wasn't specifically voter registration, but that is something he had done before they moved here to the United States.
I remember having a discussion with Jane when we were getting up towards 20 customers. And I'd been in a software company. And so I sat down and said, Jane, are you sure you really want to do this? Because this is what lies in front of us. You're going to get officers and staff, and the whole thing is going to get big, and it's multi-year commitment. And we're getting way beyond. We've got our needs met. We're growing a company now. And Jane didn't hesitate. She says, "Yeah, I want to do this." I think it was. I don't think that was a calculation based on money. It was an emotional.
It was because what I could see was the supervisors needed our company. That's what I wanted, a company with integrity, that was doing a good job. There was such bad stuff out there. And that was, I felt for the elections officials. I really wanted to help them. And so that's what we did.
The small counties couldn't afford the systems that were out there. They were being underserved. And actually Jane and a couple friends of hers created the company originally. Leon County in '93 took a chance on a small local company called VR Systems, and Jane and her partners, and with David's help, created a DOS-based computer system that was a voter registration system that has become, Voter Focus. And they built the system with the help from the Leon County Elections Office.
We were the incubators for VR Systems. They started in our vault. David Watson was camped out for years, and almost like one of our staff members, we transitioned off of the mainframe voter registration system to our PC-based and then, local network.
They spent months in that elections office to understand, to make sure the system was meeting the needs of that first customer. We've grown from there, obviously, but with the core still being voter registration and elections and serving the needs of elections officials. That's where we started, and that's where we still are today.
Glad they started here in Tallahassee with us in Leon County, and they've had a lot of patience as we learned ourselves, especially back then, what we really needed out of the system, and they delivered.
For me, growing up as a young child, my mom would take me to the polls with her to vote. She would always impress upon me how important it was to exercise my right to vote. And now to be on this end, ensuring that our supervisors can do what they need to do as far as following the laws and the statutes statutes based on our software, it makes me feel like I'm doing my part and I'm giving back. So it's a very fulfilling position for me to be in.
The amount of customers we had going through the 2000 election, 12 Florida counties used either our DOS-based system or an early version of Voter Focus. The 2000 election, obviously, the world was focused on Florida and the Florida elections. As a result of that, legislation passed and there were new requirements placed on elections officials here in Florida. Jane and David started working with Dale Woodruff, who had been in Florida elections for, at that point, probably 30 years. By the time I came on in March and April, we had contracts signed, counties lined up, and a backlog of implementing these. And Dale used that as a sales strategy. He essentially said, you better get in line, because the list is getting longer, and the longer you wait, the further back you'll be.
We were at the right place at the right time for Jane, David, and myself, and it just blew up. We hired Mindy on after that, and I had to move out of Jane's living room.
Yes, it was all out of our house.
Yeah. They started at home. Just hearing their story, it just inspired me to know, like, if you have a dream and you believe in it and you put in the work, that you can do it.
Between 2001 and 2003, we brought on 36 counties on the voter registration system in 18 months. Some of them were small, tiny counties, and some of them were significantly large counties. I was doing the Pinellas County install the same weeks that Jane was doing the Jacksonville, Duval County installs. Those are two very big counties at the same time. So it was myself, another lady, and then Jane and Ren were in Duval, and you just made it happen.
Granted, it's been a lifetime ago, but I remember getting this, seeing the job description on Monster.com, and I saw the job description. I went, wow, I don't know anything really about technology. I know nothing about elections, but what really stood out in this job description was the customer service aspect of things, and that's all my experience.
We have Ren Fowler, who's been with us almost as long as I've been here, about a year and a half less, and she fell right in, and it's one of the reasons we're exceptional at what we do.
Before college, I got my first job at 15, working as a waitress at the local Friendlies, and worked with my mom with her things. So everything was customer service driven, and that's really what stood out to me with VR Systems at the time, was that they were looking for somebody with that experience, because that was one of their main focuses with what they do for their customers.
Very few people who have started working at VR Systems have had elections experience. I wouldn't say none. There's a couple people who have had elections experience, but that's not a prerequisite to start here.
If you would have asked me this 10 years ago, would I be working for a company that's doing election stuff? No, this was not an area that I thought that I would work in, but I love people, I love helping people, and this is just another avenue that I can do that in. I'm able to bring what I've done in the education world over into the technology world and merge those two things together. They actually call the term ed tech, so it's just teaching technology.
I applied my teaching background to training new customers. Erica, who you spoke to earlier, came to us as a teacher also, so she and I have a shared language.
Broward County was a huge customer that we gotten, so that was the first county that I actually trained. They're still like one of my favorite customers today.
VR was such a good fit and crazy timing for me, because I had actually been living in the US for 20 years, but just became a citizen within 2 years before I started working with VR. And I made that decision to apply for citizenship on midterm election day, because I wasn't able to participate in the process. And I had colleagues that weren't bothering to vote because they didn't care enough. And so I went home that day, made the decision, and put in my application. And then later that year, stumbled upon this opportunity with VR. I saw the founders video online. Obviously, I have a personal connection there, being British, just like David and Jane. And I just thought it was a meant-to-be opportunity that just really fell in my lap and worked out perfectly for me.
EWOC is Employee Wellness and Ownership Kinship. We had an ESOP Communications Committee, and we had a Wellness Committee. And we did similar activities, but we decided to join forces, and we could do even better activities. We work together every day, but I don't always get to work with the Voter Focus team, the EVA team, or the developers. But with the EWOC, we put teams together that wouldn't normally be together. An EVA team member, a developer, and a Voter Focus team member, and that kind of stuff. So once again, you could interact with people you don't normally interact with. And we also have an item that's called the Tinkle Time, sometimes, and it goes in the restrooms, and it'll have a little note about the ESOP, a health tip, and we usually have a joke or a riddle. And we're gonna have a snow cone truck come next month.
I've been talking to Dale and David about some of the old memories over the years. Dale Woodruff. I remember when Hurricane Charlie hit so hard down there, I was working with a vendor at the time, the tabulation vendor. And I remember being in the offices, half of the roof was torn off as the rain is just pouring onto the desk with computers. The election supervisor, Dean Collins, bless his soul, had passed away right after the hurricane. About 8 days before the election, maybe a week before, and we had to somehow make the elections work.
The birth of EVID definitely started with Hurricane Charlie. That was sort of the genesis for the EVID system because we recognized how important it was to be able to check people through quickly and reliably in the aftermath of this hurricane where a lot less polling places were available and things really had to work right in a especially challenging situation.
We had an application on there called Counter, which would allow voters to come in and actually be issued a ballot from the counter, which is why it had the term counter. We were able to take that counter application and port it into laptops that could be used in the field because all the polling places had been wiped out. We needed a methodology to be able to allow voters to go anywhere to vote.
Yeah, it was very scary, but with VR's help, we were able to have an election on time in spite of a hurricane that pretty much devastated the county. They came, they helped us, they were wonderful. The original EVIDs were laptops that I had to purchase and Cherry keyboards that were obtained by David and Jane Watson and a Dymo printer, and it was all kind of cabled together and hobbled together, and it took someone of some knowledge to put it together because you're networking things. There was a switch involved, a network switch and cables, and it was not a very elegant solution, but it worked.
Without that system, they wouldn't have been able to meet the needs of those check-ins.
And in 2005, we recognized this is a product.
With iPads being so ubiquitous these days and other tablets and phones and handheld devices, we kind of forget that in those days that didn't really exist. And we sort of settled on point-of-sale devices. And you had a lot of the same kind of features, the ability to swipe a driver's license instead of a credit card, let's say.
Today we have over 13,000 electronic poll books in use just in Florida. So because of the dedication that Dale had representing VR Systems, we've become the company we are today. Our understanding is that there were many vendors who were working to create an electronic poll book at the same time. But because of Hurricane Charlie, we were the first to actually be used in a real election. So we say we are the first electronic poll book because we were the first to be used. And in 2005, we sold our first electronic poll book to our customers as a poll book. We believe that that was the first in the nation.
Ben just celebrated his 15th anniversary. When Ben joined us, he brought a professionalism to product management. He has a background in logistics and understands hardware and understands products. Him coming onto the scene, essentially, we didn't have the concept of a product manager before that. We were relying on partners for that, and Ben was able to whip us into shape to help us understand that space a lot better.
In my former job, I was hanging TVs, installing AV equipment for a guy. He just kept peppering me with questions. He just kept going. It's like, well, do you have a 4-year degree? What is it in? Do you see yourself being, this, what you're doing for the rest of your life? Or do you own part of the business? All those kinds of things. I was like, no. And he eventually came out with it. Well, do you want a job? Because I own a software company in Tallahassee. It's actually an employee-owned company, so all the employees own the company. And do you want a job? I'm like, well, that's interesting, maybe, right? And so he said, well, give me your resume and we'll see how it goes. That person who I was hanging TV for was Ben.
VR Systems is this % employee owned?
That was us. I paused it before you finished. It's 100%. That is correct. 100% employee owned.
We became an ESOP in 2010. An ESOP is an employee-owned company.
Yes, the ESOP is a great benefit, and it gives you that sense of, I'm gonna come in, do my best, try hard every day. I'm gonna be here for the customers as well as my coworkers. And that's why they created the ESOP, because we all depend on each other, working together, learning from each other. I tell the staff, I've been here for 15 years, but I'm learning constantly.
Our success is all tied together. That could be why there's such a huge culture here, a large family culture, and as it grows, you grow. I've heard all the stories of previous buildings. I missed a lot of the growth. Oh, back in the day, we used to have to crawl over boxes to get the stuff. I'm glad we don't have that anymore. Now we have a nice big warehouse, we have plenty of space.
When we were in the Remington Green offices, it was actually owned by the Watsons. We took over the entire Watson building on Remington Green, and we had to expand into a neighboring building. We were busting at the seams. And so we started looking for space and found our current location. We have 5 acres here. There's plenty of space for another building. So as we continue to grow, we can continue in this space.
I still remember being in the office when Jane and David made the announcement that they were going to retire and then give us, this company. And my future retirement is one thing, but it's also a gift of knowing that they trusted us to carry on this company that they built and let us, carry it on for the next, 30 years.
We had a couple of years there where Jane and David had announced their retirement, and I was named the next CEO. And so with so many of us having been with the company so long, the transition was great.
Love Mindy. She was my manager when I started.
With an ESOP or an employee-owned company, an executive board is part of the governance structure. And in 2010, we had to create an executive board.
Hi, I'm Pam Butler, an original board member, as David and Jane are. And I just in June of this year sold a business that I had created and that had been operating for about 23 years.
So yeah, Jane and David continue to be on our board of directors. David Watson is the chairman of the board.
It may take some time. Board members are hard to find. Board members are really hard to find. That you're not operational, so your approach to the business is at a very abstract level. There aren't many people who can think at that level.
I meet with him once a month, and he hears how the company's going, and he continues to challenge what we're doing, as he should. There you go. And
VR, you interview with the team that you're working with, and then you present a training. And at the time you present the training to all of the management and the founders who are Jane and David. And so it ended up being a really good training. And I had them do like scenarios. And it was funny because at the time, David Watson was like supposed to be the difficult customer. It ended up being like a really funny and fun time. And I got hired shortly after that.
Where the buttons are placed, background, workflows are identical in regards to voter check-in workflows. This one, Jane, you're always the first. You always seem, yeah, she did. Last time she wrote something, right?
TJ told me about her bringing some stuff.
Text size, text color, we really try to mimic between the two. So the counties and jurisdictions on sales, when they do have to present this to a county or to a future jurisdiction, they wouldn't notice the difference between the two.
Very early on, the board challenged management, which was Jane and David primarily at the time, but the rest of us too, to what's the next step, right? Florida's only so big. We got engaged with Election Center. Election Center is a national organization that brings together elections officials. I proposed to Jane and David that we as VR Systems got involved on a national scale in that way.
I graduated in 2019 from Election Center, an education program for election officials around the country.
Ben and I started attending classes nearly 10 years ago. We went through the certification. You get to know these people on a personal level because you spend many days with them in these classes, and that was great. We've grown into North Carolina, we've grown into Illinois, Indiana, Texas. We now have all 67 counties, proud to say. It was a long time to get there, and the fact that we sold individual contracts to each of those 67 counties and still have those to this day it's a great sense of pride for me.
We are attending conferences, it seems like all of the time. So, whether it's Florida, DC, Indiana, Texas,
We have been attending conferences in Texas for the last 4 years.
VR Systems loves to be able to get in front of our customers, being able to see them face to face, and the Texas Law Conference has been a great venue for doing so.
One of my favorite things about conferences is to get a chance to put a face with a name. We hear their voices on the telephone. We talk to them regularly, sometimes during their most stressful periods during an election, and you kind of bond over that.
We always try to have folks there to be able to, one, share who we are with the United States, but also to get information from these different areas, because every state, every county is different.
It's amazing to be a part of a company that's been here for 30 years and is just going to keep going. And everybody that's been involved in the early years, obviously, did lay the solid foundation for the company to grow on. From 2, 3, 4 people to now be as big as we are and serving 6 different states.
We've seen vendors in our space have growth that they couldn't keep up with. Their customers are paying the price. We don't want that to happen to our customers. So we are strategic about the growth, about where we're going, what products we're selling there. We won't take on more states or more jurisdictions than we can handle. We want to make sure that our future customers and our existing customers continue to see that we're here for making sure the community's needs are being met.
No, it's out of the question. Yeah, send security up. We're going to escort Ash out of the building.